Welcome to today's session. In today's session, we are going to discuss about JPA. JPA is Java Persistent API. Now, if you want to connect your Java code with a database, either it can be a Derby or Oracle or MySQL, whatever the database may be, you need to write a JDBC connection code, right? So you have to write codes and you have to execute different statements like select, update, delete, etc. Now this database connectivity, you have to know the SQL code. You should know to write the SQL code to get connected with your database. Now with the help of this JPA, uh, there's no need to know the SQL code. Instead, you can create an entity and map the entity with your database. Okay, and you can communicate with the entity. So entity is nothing but like an object. So you can write codes or you can communicate with your object. You can query your object. If you want to update, you update your object. That update is automatically translated into database operation by the JPA. So in the background, you can see there is a JPA which translates all your object query into database query. So what we are doing here is we are going to create a table and the table is mapped to an entity. Okay, the programmers now has to write query to manipulate the entity, not the database. Now, when you write query to manipulate your entity, you will not be using SQL language. You will be using a special language called as JPQL query. Okay, so we'll write a special language called as JPQL query to query your entity. Now, all the query that you write will be converted into SQL in the background by the JPA. So by using JPA, the programmers can easily interact with the database with a less amount of code. Now let's see an example program how to perform CRUD operation with the help of JPA. Now we are going to use Derby database. So if you want to use Derby database, you have to start your Apache NetBeans. You have to right click and start it as a administrator. Okay, run as administrator. Okay, so then only the Derby database will work without showing any error. So now here what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a database first. Now I'll go here. You have, this is your Derby database. So I will create a new database here. Okay, so let me give the database name as JPA001 or JPA. Okay, and the username I will give it as app and password is also app. Confirm password app. So I'm creating a new database. So once you give OK, you can see the database is getting created. So once you get the link of the database, so here you get the link of the database. Now here we have to connect to this database. So this is your database. Now here you don't have any tables. We have to create the tables. So I'm going to create the table. Let the name of the table be employee. And then I'm going to add columns. Let the column be ID. Okay, so here I'm going to select it as numeric and make it as a primary key, or I will select it as integer. Okay, and make it as a primary key. Now I'm going to add another column, name of the employee. This is going to be varchar. Okay, size is 40. I'm going to add one more column, department name. This is also varchar. Okay, and the size is 40. So now we have added 3 columns to this table. Now I will show you the table. The table is empty. Okay, now we are going to write the Java code to perform the CRUD operation with the help of JPA. So now we will go to the project folder here. Okay, so as I told you, we are going to create a new project. So let me create a new project. Here we don't have any web application. We are just going to write a Java code. So we will select Java application. Okay, let me give the name as JPA001. Okay, so the new project is created. You can see the new project is created. Now we'll create a new Java class new Java class. The name of the class, let me give it as main, and I have to give a package where you have to create the Java class. So let me give some package name. Okay, so here you can see the Java class is created. Okay, so now the next important thing you have to do is you have to create an entity from the table. You have a table, now we have to create an entity for that table. Now whatever we do to the entity, it will be converted to the database. So we write query, JPQL query on the entity, and you can do all manipulations on the entity, like you can create, you can read, update and delete on the entity. In the background, the JPA will automatically translate these JPQL queries to SQL queries on the database. Okay, so we are not going to write the direct SQL query on the database. We are going to write it on the entity. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create an entity from the table. So right click, new. Here you have an option, entity class from database. Just click this and select which database you want to select. This is a database we created, JPA. Select the name of the database. Automatically the table name appears here. Just click add and then click next. Okay, here you have to select next, and here you have to select list, because you're going to read all the rows of your table and store it in a list. Okay, so we have to select the collection type as list and then click on finish. Now here you can see the entity is created. Okay, so we did not write a single piece of code, automatically the entity is created. So here you can see the name of the entity is employee, because the table name is also employee. So here you can see the annotation at table. Okay, at table, and here you can see at entity. So this is the entity. Okay, and here you can see some queries here. For example, so look at these queries here. These are the queries. These queries are called as static queries because it comes by default. So here you can see there is a query to query all the rows of the employee table, or you can write queries to select or search the employee table by ID, or search the employee table by name, or search the employee table by department. Okay, so these queries come as default. So these queries are called as static queries. So if you want to select all the information from employee table, you can just call this query by name. This is the name of the query, find all. If you want to search the employee table by ID, then you can call this query by name, employee.find by ID. You can search by name, you can search by department name. So here you can see some static queries. These are called as named queries. So if you want to create some dynamic queries, that also you can do. So these are static queries, so they are written under the annotation at named queries. So just if I want to select all the rows of the employee table, I need not write any query. I will just call this static query by name. Okay, so this is your entity class. So here you can see all the columns of your table are declared as an attribute here. So here you have ID attribute, name attribute and department attribute. You can see at column annotation on top of all these attribute names. So the columns of the table are created as an attribute of an entity. And here you have a no argument constructor. Okay, and you have the set and the get method. So this is your entity. So now our entity is ready. Now the next thing we have to do is we have to configure configure the JPA. So for that you have to go to other sources. Here you have the deployment descriptor called as persistent.xml file. So here you have to give a name for the persistent unit. So this looks very long, so I will give a very short name here. So let me give the name as JPA 001. Okay, so here you have to give the name of the persistent unit. This name is important when you want to create an instance for the entity manager. Okay, and here you have to select which database you are connecting to. The name of the database, I think we used, yeah, JPA. The name of the database is correct, JPA. And then the table name is employee, as everything is correct. Just we change the name of the persistent unit. If you want to see the XML, equivalent XML annotation of this one, so here you can see the XML version of that one. So here you will see the URL of the database, what type of database, what is the username, what is the password, driver value, everything is given here. So just we will save this and go back to our main program. Okay, we'll go back to the main program now. Before we start coding, we have to do one more thing. We have to specify the driver for the Derby database. Okay, so you need to download the jar file and attach the jar file to your project. The database that we are using is Derby, so you have to download the Derby client driver jar file and then attach that jar file into your project. Since we are using Marvin, Marvin will do it for us. We just have to copy paste the dependency that is required. Let me show you from where we have to copy the dependency. So here you have to go to Marvin repository. There you have to type Apache Derby client JDBC driver. So the version that I'm going to use is 10.10.1.1. So just you have to copy this dependency. Okay, just I'll copy this dependency and I have to paste it in my pom.xml file. Okay, automatically my Marvin will download the jar file that is required for the connection. So I will go here, I will go to pom.xml file. So here you can see inside your project, in the project files you have pom.xml file. So there I have to paste the dependency. So here you can see I have pasted the dependency here. Okay, so just go to the Marvin repository, there type in there you have to type Apache Derby client JDBC driver, and this is a version that I'm going to use. So just copy this dependency and paste it in the pom.xml file. Okay, just paste this dependency. So once you save it, you can see automatically the jar file is getting downloaded into our project. So we finish all the configurations. Now it is time to do our program. So now I'll go to the main program. So here, sorry, I will paste the dependency in the pom.xml file. Okay, then I will go to the main program. Now in the main program, the first thing that I have to do is I have to get the instance for the entity manager. Now more than one clients can work with the same database at the same time, so different instance will be created for each user. Okay, to create the instance for our database, we need entity manager. So let me create an object for entity manager. And also we need entity manager factory. So let me click and add the import. Okay, now I have to create the instance for the entity manager. So I will write EMF equal to persistent dot. I have a method called as create entity manager factory, and here I have to give my persistent unit name. The persistent unit name will be available in persistent.xml. So here we have given the name, the same name you have to give it here. So the same name you have to specify here. Okay, I think I forgot to write the main method. So public static void main. This has to be declared inside the main method. Okay, so I got the handle for the factory. Now I have to get the instance of entity manager. emf dot create manager. Now I got the instance. Okay, now I'm going to insert one row into the database. So to insert, I have to start the get transaction dot begin. Okay, I just begin the transaction. Now I have to create a object for the entity. Okay, so this is my entity name. Let me call E1 is my object name. Okay, new employee. So I'm just creating a empty object, okay, by calling the no argument constructor. So here you have to add the package because your employee is in this package JPA 001. So you have to click this import to load the package. So once this is done, so we created an empty object. Now we have to set the value for the object. So we will call E1 dot, there is set method. So set ID, I'm going to make the employee ID as 1. And E1 dot, I will call set name. Let me call the name of the employee as a Hema. Then E1 dot set department name. I will make the department name as IT. So once this is done, I have to call the method persist to permanently store this object in the database. Okay. So I have to call, sorry, I want to call em entity manager dot, I have to call the method persist and give the object name inside. So once I've called the persist object, this will be stored permanently inside the database. Okay, now I can call commit get transaction dot commit. I'm just inserting only one row into the database. Okay, now I will close the connection for EM. Similarly, EMF dot close. Okay, so that's it. I'm just going to execute the code. So this is your main class. Now the code is getting executed. This row has to be updated into the database. Now the code is successful. Now we'll go to the table and check our employee table. You can see one row is inserted to the employee table. Fine. Okay, so we have done the in CRUD operation, we have done the first operation, that is create. So we created an entity. It means it is inserting a row into the database. Now let's select this table and view. Now I'll go to the main.java program. So now already one row is inserted. So let me make all these statements as comment statements. Okay, because I'm not going to, if I execute this statements again, it will show me error because the same code cannot be inserted. Employee number is primary key, right? So you cannot execute the same code again. So I will make this statements as comment statements. Okay, now I'm going to read the database and display. So if you want to read the employee table, you need to execute the select query. The query is already written. Okay, so I'm just going to call that query. Now the select query will return a list of employees. So let me declare a list. Okay, the name of the list is emp list. Okay, so if you have more than one row, it will return as a list. So I will write emp dot, okay, create named query. Already you have a named query. Okay, so I have to give the name of the query here. The name of the query is employee dot find all. Okay, so this is the name of the query and you have to give the class name. Okay, so here the class name is employee dot class. Okay, semicolon. So click here and import the list package. Okay. Just there is an error. Let me check that error. Sorry, the query doesn't finish. Here you have to call dot get result list. Okay, so this only will return the result of the query. So this is a query we are going to execute. Now this will give me the list of rows in the employee table. Now once I get the list of employee rows, now I want to print the result. Okay, so it will be more than one row. So I'm writing a for statement. Okay, so let me call the variable as, okay, you can also call it as I. So I'm going to repeat this list. Okay, so just I'm going to print everything. Let me print the ID. So I'm sorry. So to print the ID, you have to call the get method. So I will call I.get ID. So similarly, I will print the name and the department name. Get name and department name. Department name. Okay, fine. So now I will just execute this code and I will show you the output. So it reads a row from the table and you can see the result will be printed here. So here you can see it prints that one row. Okay, the next operation is the update operation. Update operation is nothing but whatever you do here will be updated to the database. Okay, for that you have a query to perform the update operation. The query is called as you have a method to perform the update operation. The method is called as em.merge. So here you can create any number of rows you want and this write em.merge. Okay, em.merge. So this is for update. Okay, the last one more query is there, that is for deleting a row. So if you want to delete a row, you have a method called as em.remove. Okay, remove and which object you want to remove. So here you have to give the object name which you want to remove. So first we have to select which row we want to remove. So to select the row, let me declare this object. First I will find the row. Okay, so there is a find method. This find method will return the object which you want to delete. Okay, so first let me select it. The entity class name is employee dot class, and the next parameter you can see you have to give your primary key. So I want to select the employee number 1. So now this will give me the object E. Okay, so it finds the first row and the object E will point to the first row. Now I'm going to remove the object E. Okay, now after removing, let me execute the same query again. Okay, to show you that your table is empty, or I'll show you from the database. Okay, so let me execute this query. Okay, there is an error. is not a known entity type. Okay, there is an illegal argument exception in the statement. Okay, the error is I have to comment the merge statement because I just will show you the remove alone and then I will show you the merge. So merge is actually used when you want to update the row. Okay, so here you have created an employee object. Okay, here you have created an employee object and assign values for employee number 1. After that, you have to execute the merge statement, em.merge. Okay, so only when you are inserting the row, you have to execute merge. Whatever row you are inserting, it will be updated to the database. Okay, so here I have committed the insert statement, right? Here I have commented the insert statement. So there is no use of calling merge here. So that also will be commented. So now just I will execute the remove statement alone. So here I have executed the remove statements. Here you can see the output is successful. Now you can see the table to check whether that row is available or not. So here you can see the row is not deleted from the table because we have not given commit after delete. So after removing, you can see I committed the transaction. Now you can go to the table and check whether that row is deleted. So here you can see the row is deleted. So you can do the CRUD operation with the help of Java persistent application, persistent API, okay, by interacting with your entity. So here what we did, we created an employee table and we created an entity. Now if you want to do the CRUD operation on your table, you can do the same manipulation on your entity. So this is a manipulation that we did on the entity. So here you can see we created one new object for the entity and we set the values for the entity. Okay, and if you want to save it permanently into your database, this object you want to save permanently in your database, you have to call the method persist. Suppose you want to retrieve all the rows from your table. Now here you cannot talk in terms of table, it is in terms of entity. So you want to retrieve all the rows of the entity, you have to use the method find method. Okay, so you have to use find method. So you have to execute the named query which is there in your entity by calling get result list. This will give you all the rows. Now you can write a for loop and display all the rows. Okay, so after you create all these rows, now you have to update by calling the merge statement. Okay, so you have to call merge statement to update all these rows in your database. Then the last one is to remove a particular entity. Okay, and here you're going to remove an object. So first you have to find the object. By giving the primary key, you can find the object. After you find the object, you can remove the object, and finally you have to call commit so that your changes will be reflected to the database. Hope you understood this session. We will meet in another session. Thank you.